Like I was just like bored creatively, and then I started filming my life in ways, because like I went through a depression. I still, even though I'm clean, I still deal with depression, and I still take medicine for it and go to therapy for it. And I was going through a depression, and I spent a lot of time watching YouTube, and I really wanted to do YouTube videos. And so I just thought like, okay, how can and I was really inspired by like Casey Neistat and, Ben Brown and Fun for Louie Cole. And I was like, okay, how can I start to share my unique perspective? I mean, Casey used to always talk about that. He's like, you have a unique perspective in life. You need to share it. And
the podcast that you did with me was the first time you'd ever shared it, and you were able to like listen back, and you're
I got to hear it. Yeah, absolutely. Like I knew I had
something to say.
I knew I had something to say, and I then needed to create a place for me to say it. And I had tried to create a bunch of different places that weren't actually online. And then I was like, I got to do it online,
And you also realized, like, when you're laid up in the hospital bed after you get a spinal cord injury, you're sitting there wondering what's going to happen for your future. You probably don't know any other wheelchair users. You've got, this, you don't have a compelling future for yourself anymore, because everything that you've ever planned on doing did not involve being a wheelchair user. You don't even, and the portrayal of wheelchair users in the media is typically, old people or like weak, or, there's no quote unquote cool wheelchair users besides like Joe on Family Guy and like Professor X in X-Men or whatever.
Or like Jimmy from Degrassi, but I don't even know if he was cool. And then how about the guy in Glee? Was that guy cool?
I don't know if he was cool or not. Never watched Glee. But I mean, again, like I can't think of any like cool, badass wheelchair users.
But those are also media depiction. Those aren't real life. But they aren't real.
They're not. But that's what I'm saying is like when you're laid up in the hospital bed and you are not familiar with wheelchair users, and that's the only introduction that you have to them, and then you come to find out that the doctors are telling you you're going to be needing to use a wheelchair for the rest of your life, you have all these preconceived notions.
Yeah, I had to go full research mode.
You had to go full research mode, and you wanted to create something for that past version of yourself, right?
Yeah, because I think everyone has research mode. They want to know, can I get a job? Can I get a girlfriend? Can I have fun? Can I hang out with friends? Like can I drive? What does my future look like? And that wasn't there. I remember I found a show. It was like a reality show on TLC.
Push Girls, right?
Yeah, I found it through torrents. It was called Push Girls, and it was only on like 2 seasons, and it was more of a reality show, if anything. There was like 3 paras and a quad, and they just kind of like showed their day-to-day living, sorta. It really wasn't. I didn't learn a bunch, but what I did learn, the videos sucked. They were just like doctors in a lab coat sitting in a quiet room with white walls in the background, speaking in a lot of medical jargon, and I was like, dude, I don't like this.
Doesn't make you stoked to be a wheelchair user.
Yeah, and I did learn a lot of stuff from my physical therapist and occupational therapist, and I went to like a pretty good like rehab facility, and I got involved in team sports and peers, and like I had a pretty good first year. But I didn't set myself up for success, because by the time I got to back to school and back to work, I kind of like rejected all that, because I didn't want to be associated with wheelchair people. I kind of thought they were all kind of losers, and I didn't want to have to do anything with them, and I didn't think there was any valuable, because I was like, well, before I was a wheelchair user, I didn't want to hang out with disabled people. So now that I'm a wheelchair user, I still don't want to hang out with disabled people. It was kind of like a weird mentality that
I can get that though. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
It's like I didn't want to be a member of like the poor me party. I didn't want to be a part of I didn't want to associate with the stereotypes in my head. They weren't actually those stereotypes, but I had made them that stereotype in my own head. I'd made them these kind of like weak, pathetic, sad
losers
that like people had to take care of them, and like I wasn't into that. But then after I got back to school, that's kind of like when the drug use started, because I was out of school for, a period of time, and I needed help catching up. And so I started taking some study drugs, and then I found myself, again, I talk all this in my Untold Story, which will be linked everywhere. I started taking study drugs and then, opiates, like, painkillers and stuff like that. And it just it just put me in a bad place. It just put me in a real bad place. And, I sunk deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I want to, the big motivation behind Wheels2Walking and all of this is for that younger version of myself, someone who didn't know what his future looked like, didn't know how to do anything wheelchair related, didn't have a reason to wake up every day. Someone who I'm trying to prevent people from going down my path. Like, you do not have to get addicted to drugs. Like, you do not have to become really depressed. You do not have to, become suicidal and get institutionalized. Like, you can have a great life. You just don't do what I did. So I share a lot.
It's a precautionary tale.
It's unfortunately a common story, but I hope that through this podcast and through my videos, it becomes an uncommon
Well, the
story.
dopest part is that it didn't end in demise. Like, it didn't end in you killing yourself and being like, learn from this guy, don't do what he did. It's like, it ended in triumph. It ended in you being this like awesome public figure that is becoming the face of, cool wheelchair users. I mean, there's plenty of them out there. We've met tons of cool, awesome guys that are doing really cool stuff. I mean, whether they're involved in adaptive sports or whether they're, just really awesome individuals like that are just so happen to be in a wheelchair. It's really cool because you're kind of that first person to be the quote unquote like Casey Neistat or like whatever of wheelchair users. Because surprisingly, no one's done it the right way. And that's what kind of where I come into the whole thing. Because
totally.
I realized that like I was getting really good at video editing. Actually, I just released the final episode of the Andrew Deitch podcast. Dun, dun, dun. And I recorded it tonight actually. And you can go listen to it on my feed. But I kind of in that process kind of talk about my half of this side of the story too and how I developed myself as a video creator. But basically, by the time I started working with Richard, I was like getting a lot more comfortable with working with videos and everything. And I was really inspired by the same types of creators that you were. So we just vibed like super, super well once we started to finally work together, because we could speak the same language as far as what we knew we wanted to create. Like if I was saying, oh, we want it to feel like a Peter McKinnon vlog, or like, oh, this needs to look like kind of like Casey Neistat type feel, or oh, we should try to make a video like this creator. We watch the same YouTubers. We listen to the same kind of music a lot. We're very, very similar in a lot of ways.
Hobbies. I mean, we used to go to Caffeine and Exotics. We used to go to Caffeine and Octane. I remember one time we were on your like living room floor at your house, just like looking at pictures of when you went to Goodwood, right? And later your mom commented like, dude, you would not know that you guys met like a couple months ago. Like,
no, literally people think we're childhood best friends. Yeah. Like there's been articles written that are like, Andrew Deitch, his childhood best friend and also now producer. And it's like,
nah, dude, we met a couple years ago.
2 years ago. But you wouldn't know it.
Yeah, the stars aligned because if he would, I mean, I think about that, like if Jalila would have met me any other time than when she met me, if you would have met me at any other time than when you met me, we would have not clicked. I was not in a place. And that's another good thing is like people love a good comeback story, and one of the things that again Wheels2Walking does for me, because this is kind of cathartic. Like I use Wheels2Walking for myself too, and
totally,
it's not only to help that kid inside of me and to make sure no one else like screws up or whatever, but it's also to make my suffering worth it, because I suffered for years. I went through hell and back, and it was awful. It was one of the worst things ever. I would never wish it on my worst enemies. Even like the day-to-day stuff I go through right now that I usually keep on the DL because it's not helpful to share, my sufferings and these difficulties that I'm going through, because that just feels like I'm placing a burden on other people. It feels like by kind of be like, oh, I'm going through this shit, and if I tell you about it, then all of a sudden that makes it your shit, and I don't want to do that. But anyway, this was also to make it worth it. Because I now receive messages from people that will make me cry, and it's usually messages of like, I mean, one recently I got, I'll just say, like it was from a sibling who was basically like, hey, my brother was injured 2 years ago. He was going down a really bad path. He was, suicidal, and we were all worried about him. And then he found your videos, and he's completely turned his life around. And no one can think, in the whole family, no one can think of any other thing that changed except for the fact that he started watching your videos. So I just want to say thanks for saving my brother. Because of you, I now have a brother again. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to cry now.
BRB, gonna wipe the tears off my face.
Because, like, my siblings needed that for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, man.
My siblings, like, my mom, my sisters, they were like, dude, he's dead. Like,
they're waiting for the call.
For real. I mean,
dude, that's a really sad place, dude. Like, I've been friends with a lot of people in recovery as well. And have, some of my brother's friends are struggling with some stuff right now. And it's like really, really fucking sad when literally parents and siblings they are at their wits end and they're pretty much just waiting for that call.
Yeah, they've done what I call the pre-grieve. Like they're they're like, they're already dead, but like let me just wait until they could get the call.
It's rough, man.
Which is an unfortunate reality of recovery. I mean, I've pre-grieved quite a few people, and then when they do die, I'm like, yep, well, I don't think I need to go to their funeral because I'm already over it. I was over it before.
Damn.
It's kind of messed up, but
it's real, dude. It's real.
Yeah, but that's like, Wheels2Walking in a nutshell. I mean, obviously it's so much more than that. And for those of you that are new, or maybe even just found out about us about the podcast.
Maybe we're on New and Noteworthy.
Oh, you guys, yeah, maybe you did what we asked you to do. But you can kind of go back and even from the beginning, like Wheels2Walking was for newly injured wheelchair users, but kind of recently I've just been saying new wheelchair users because regardless if you've been injured or not, there's a lot of the similar things that we deal with. And then even there's a lot of people that will comment and be like, I'm not in a wheelchair or use a wheelchair or ever even met someone in a wheelchair, but I love watching your videos. Hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want the full episode, you can click right here. If you want to subscribe, click here. If you want more clips, we got 2 more right over here.